All right, I did something today in church that might be a little unorthodox, so you guys will have to let me know if I'm way off base here or if this was something that you wish your kids could see more of. I was teaching the youth Sunday school class, kind of last minute, but I was prepared with the come follow me. I just hadn't got through like my finishing touches of what I wanted the youth to take away. And so as I was talking about Joseph Smith, Ezra Booth, and the opportunity to stand up when someone challenges your testimony. I said what I normally say to the youth class when I'm in this situation is like, are you guys familiar with what's what this story, like what's going on and how this applies to you? And they were kind of like, eh. And I said, well, this is basically how this translates. Joseph Smith and Printing Press. So the Printing Press was like the Facebook of that day. And so there's somebody on Facebook that's basically blasting him, and he's trying to figure out what to do in that situation. And you could kind of see, like, oh, yeah, okay, I kind of get it. And then one of the kids said, well, we're not really on social media. And I said, great. But someday you will be. Can you guys envision what this is like? Do you guys, and they were all kind of like, yeah, we know what it's like because, school and people say stuff and whatever. And I was like, okay, so what would you do? And as we were talking about what to do about it, I started realizing that they don't have a lot of exposure to this kind of thing. And so I said, do you guys know the typical attacks on the church? And they were like, no, well, kind of. Like, why do you guys do that? And I was like, well, that's like a question. Like, what about an attack? And there was getting Blake looks, and so I said, okay, how about some of these attacks? And I gave them like the typical attacks. I was like, well, what about race in the priesthood, and plural marriage, and tithing is a scam, and I named off a bunch of them, and they're all like, no, we've never heard of that. I was like, what? You guys have never heard of those? Like nobody's ever brought that up at school. You haven't talked about it in your family or anything. They were like, no. I was like, okay, well, you're going to get that for sure. How would you guys respond? And they were kind of like, I don't know. And I was like, how about this? let's let's role play. I will be the aggressor, and you can try and defend your testimony. And they were kind of like, yes, no, I don't know. So I was like, okay, I'll start with you. They're like, what'd you do last Sunday? And he's like, well, I went to church. And I was like, that's dumb. So, and I was like, why do you do that? And he kind of like started to defend, and then I just like kept going, and then I would just go to the next person. And we went through quite a few things. Like, did you know Joseph Smith had 35 wives? Why do you pay tithing? It's just a big corporate scam. I'll bet you're trying to buy your way into heaven. Well, how many heavens do you guys have? And I went through the whole thing. I went through race in the priesthood and plural marriage, polygamy, and tithing and scriptures and praying to the big man up in the sky, and how it's all dumb and stupid. Like I didn't spend 15 minutes doing this, but it was um, probably about 5 minutes or so. A minute for each kid, or I don't know, something like that. And you could tell they had not really thought through that. I didn't expect them to be comfortable, and they weren't comfortable. But you could tell that they hadn't really thought through it. And there was a couple of good answers. There was a couple of good things, and good. I qualify them as good because they were not just bearing their testimony. And a testimony is a great way to start that kind of, trying to defend. But a testimony only gets you so far. And there were some good answers. Some of the kids were like trying to explain, and of course, if someone's aggressive and you're trying to explain, it doesn't go very well. So it didn't go very well. And one of the kids actually just kind of turned it back around on me every time, which I thought was really good. Where I'd be like, why are you praying? Isn't that kind of a silly thing to do? You don't even know who you're talking to. And he was just like, well, I think it's kind of silly not to pray. And I was like, okay, well, going to church is dumb. And he was like, well, I think not going to church is dumb. I was like, that's really good for like a 12-year-old to just kind of like reflect on it for a second and calmly respond with like, well, so we talked about it afterwards, and I said, you know, here's some things to think about. Please go through this thought experiment. We can continue to talk about this. Um, And just so you guys know, when somebody comes up to you with that kind of aggression, a lot of times it's because they're dealing with stuff that you don't know about, that you don't understand. And just in the same way that you go to church for reasons that they don't understand, they don't go to church for reasons that you don't understand. And it's often best to try and see where they're coming from and why they think the way that they do. Although, for a youth, a lot of times that's really hard to get to that point. But I remember as a youth just kind of being confused, nervous every time something like that would happen. And so it was fun to kind of talk through the youth with that today. And then as we were leaving, everybody was kind of still flustered because we did it towards the end of the class. And I was like, better to do it here than out on the street. Better to get your practice in here. And if you guys need more practice, let me know because I am a great anti-Mormon. I've got those attacks down. And I thought it was really good, but I don't know that I would do it every other week. I don't know if I'm going to catch some heat from the parents, so I don't know. I'll probably do it again, but try and refine the process a little bit so it's not so um, chaotic or disorganized or something. Um, but yeah, what do you guys think? Is that something you wish your youth had some experience around, or you're glad that they don't? What do you think?